So, an interesting thing about Doctor Who is that I've sampled a lot of Doctor Who over the years. I've, I grew up with the New Who Doctor Who adventures. I've, over the past few years, developed quite an impressive selection of the classics. I've read the books, I've got the graphic novels, I've created quite a collection of collectibles over the years. I've done pretty much everything with Doctor Who. I've played the games, pretty much everything. But the one area of Doctor Who that I always felt a bit intimidated by and could never quite bring myself to make the push to was the Big Finish audio productions. Now, for those who don't know, during the wilderness years when Doctor Who was off the air, so around the late 80s through to the kind of mid-2000s, Big Finish audio productions basically commissioned quite a lot of Doctor Who adventures involving some of the past Doctors and kind of gave extra audio adventures. Like, the actors would come in and then record stories that people would purely listen to. Now, a lot of people have said this is a really great asset, especially with some of the Doctors who maybe never got a chance to shine, such as the Eighth Doctor, who at the time only had one TV production for many years. But I think looking at Big Finish was always a little bit intimidating for me. I never quite knew where to start or which ones were particularly good, but possibly after listening to Doctor Who Redacted, an audio adventure released by BBC Sounds earlier this year, maybe I was finally given the push that I needed to finally test out Big Finish audio productions and find one that I liked. So, I finally decided to make the leap, and the first Doctor Who Big Finish audio production that I listened to was Spare Parts. Now, this was technically the 34th audio adventure that Big Finish had made for Doctor Who. It was written by Mark Platt and was released in July 2002. It featured the voices of Peter Davison as the Fifth Doctor and his companion Nyssa, played by Sarah Sutton. Now, we can assume with this adventure that this takes place in between Season 19 and Season 20, in between Time Flight and Arc of Infinity. As it's revealed in the episode, it's clear that Adric has gone. Adric was killed by the Cybermen, they mentioned that. But also Tegan isn't there, so she's presumably been dropped off at Heathrow Airport and hasn't yet been picked up again. Now, in this particular story, Spare Parts, the Doctor and Nyssa arrive on the planet Mondas. This is many years ago. They arrive on Mondas, which has basically a huge city enclosed in a mighty glass dome, and cybernetic implants have become relatively common. I mean, there's black market, you can get them implanted, and it appears to be the human race's, at least on Mondas, the human race's primary means of survival. Now, Nyssa ends up running into a family with a father, voiced by Paul Copley, and his two children, Yvonne Hartley, played by Catherine Guck, and Frank Hartley, played by Jim Hartley. And as they begin to kind of explore, they find all of the usual parts they usually associate with Cybermen. Cybernetic implants, even an early form of a cybermat, which they can consider like a pet or a listening device for a big corporation. Now, the big corporation is... well, hang on, we'll get to them. You also get a black market dealer named Thomas Dodd, voiced by Darren Nesbitt, who kind of sells black market organic parts to people in order to keep them going. But everything is kind of overseen by a sinister corporation, and the two main characters who are introduced to us as part of the corporation are Sister Man Constant, voiced by Pamela Binns, and Dr. Man Allen, voiced by Sally Nivette. And basically, Dr. Man Allen is in the process of creating the Cybermen. And she's mainly creating them because Mondas has kind of already been knocked off its orbit and is heading towards a nebula. They can't allow that to happen, so they need to do kind of important work in order to set up some rockets to prevent Mondas from being destroyed. And she is kind of selecting various people from kind of around Mondas and around the cities as, well, she calls them volunteers, mainly being recruited by Sister Man Constant, or Pamela Benson's character. And while at first it just seems as though they're being fitted with these implants and everything, eventually they do have to eventually turn them into full Cybermen, which means removing their emotions. And the reason why they give to this stuff is that if anyone could actually see, people of these cities, they've been below the cloud layer for years. Like, they've never seen what's above, and if they did, it would drive them mad. So they basically need these people to be emotionless so that they can kind of get the job done. And it's rather heartbreaking to watch. So they've got to take these people away from their families, strip them of all emotions, fit them with cybernetic implants, and basically turn them into the original version of the Cybermen. And even so, they managed to do some quite horrifying things just with vocal work and just with sound effects, and it really does make it seem really creepy. I mean, spoiler alert, I'm just going to say spoiler alert here in case you haven't heard the story yet, but just when Yvonne, partway through the story, gets recruited for this, and then her Cyberman self actually eventually manages to find her way back home to her dad and Frank. And Frank had been kind of wanting to be recruited by the corporation. He had been kind of pushing and trying as hard as he could to get recruited, and then his sister does, to which he's evidently a little bit bitter about it. But then when they ultimately see what they're doing to his sister, and this is all taking place around Christmas time, and just the father showing her Cyberform the Christmas tree and then telling her which each thing means, it's rather heartbreaking. And even just the voices of kind of her cyber self kind of crying inside her cyber suit and just howling in pain, it's rather horrifying to listen to. I mean, when I asked around about this particular story, people did said that it is one of the best, and it is a good one, a great one to get started with, to kind of introduce you to Big Finish Doctor Who. And yeah, they managed to do a whole lot of stuff with this. I mean, I mainly came to know about this story because of an unmade Fifth Doctor story from the 1980s. I think it was originally supposed to be in 1983 or something like that. It was originally titled Genesis of the Cybermen, and it was supposed to be like an equivalent of Genesis of the Daleks, where the Fifth Doctor and his companion, who at the time was just named Felicity, it wasn't a specific companion, would arrive on Mondas, and then, due to a piece of machinery, would get thrown 50 years into the future, where they'd meet a prince's son, who's now turning everyone on Mondas into Cybermen, and would ultimately be the force of people trying to evacuate Mondas before being upgraded that would eventually knock Mondas out of orbit. To which this story was, of course, never made, but parts of it were later recycled into spare parts. And I do actually think it's a great story, all in all. I mean, it's hauntingly beautiful, but at the same time, it's dark. And you can really let your mind run wild with it. I mean, I know quite a lot of the time with TV, it's stuff like show, don't tell, but they managed to do really well with it. I mean, as other reviewers have said, there are one or two lines that maybe are a little bit too comedic, like the Doctor saying something about the Cybermen and going, yeah, it starts with a hip replacement and breast implants. Where does it end? To which I can see why. But then they also, as well as the ones I've mentioned, Peter Davison, Sarah Sutton, Paul Copley, Jim Hartley, Catherine Guck, Darren Nesbitt, Pamela Benson, Sally Nivette, they also rounded out with a great cast, including Anne Jenkins, Alistair Locke, the writer, Mark Platt, the director, Gary Russell, and, of course, Nicholas Briggs as the voice of the Cybermen, who, this was 2002, and he would later come back to voice the Daleks and the Cybermen full-time at Doctor Who. So, yeah, having never really listened to Doctor Who's Big Finish audio productions, this is where I start, with Spare Parts. And it's beautiful. Hauntingly beautiful. So if you're looking for a place to get on board with Big Finish Doctor Who and you're not entirely sure where to start, go onto Spotify and look up Spare Parts. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. Anyway, my next classic Doctor Who story that I'm going to be reviewing is Full Circle. When I watch through that, I'll let you know. Anyway, until next time, see ya.